Welcome forward here with the Eternal Poles. We're reading chapter 8, the Worship of Moloch. It will be profitable next to glance at some of the forces of disintegration which frustrate and delay the consummation outlined in the preceding chapters. I class them all under the general title of idolatries. Man is an incorrigible idol worshipper. Every age has its particular idols, not known as such to itself, but to succeeding ages, and each age abhors the idols of all ages other than its own. But there are coming sometimes crucial moments in the lives of nations in which, under pressure of suffering, some spirit of newness, rising to the surface of life, destroys, bestills, makes bonfires of vanities, and overthrows those idols which men have erected as an outlet for their impersonal passions, a justification for their excess, and a focusing point for their fears unconfessed. Signs are not lacking that such a time is now rapidly approaching, that it may be indeed already here. But an idol is like a self-element. It must be known in order to be done away with, and it is therefore quite germane to propose of this book to call attention to some of them. Nor need one be surprised at the names I give them, for an idolatry is always some good thing gone sour, an effort toward something better which, through misuse or abuse, has turned into something worse. It would still seem sweet to those to whom it was once sweet, and so the elder generation impose it upon the younger, sacrificing youth upon idolatrous altars and making a merit of it. Success is one of these altars. I have handled the bones of the Carthaginian children taken from the ruins of the temple of Moloch, but I know parents who by pressure, precept, and example are now offering up their own children on the altar of success. I have witnessed the struggles of some of these sacrificial victims in the fierce fire of competition, lured there under pressure of the same public opinion which in Carthage made it a merit to serve the granite maw of Moloch with the flower of the youth of the land. For there is something in the evil spirit of the times which dictates that everyone shall demonstrate as early and as empathetically as possible his quality, not in terms of character but of accomplishment, whether the commercial, professional, or scholastic, to make a lot of money, to write a bestseller, to hold an exhibition, to win a prize or whatnot, to stick in one's thumb up and pull out a plum and shout, "What a great boy am I." We are all of us open at times to the power of suggestion. The gigantic fabric of modern advertising has been reared upon the discovery and utilization of the fact, but young people are particularly susceptible because they are unformed and uninformed, confiding, credulous. Therefore, all these success idolatry, with its monstrous machinery of success literature, success lectures, success advertising, acts upon the plastic mind of youth in a manner little short of coercive. Only the strongest and the most independent can escape the infection of the success first virus. Administered as it is under the guise of business procedures, economics, particularly psychology, and other resounding titles, There would be nothing wrong in all this if the ideal of success held up for emulation where the right won, but it is always the success which can be measured in terms of money, fame, social prestige, or power over others. The idea being that you haven't hit the bullseye unless you've made the bell ring. Achieved front paganism. In other words, if one of these success experts were asked how to achieve unity of being or that order of happiness and contentment which, according to Emerson, is the end of culture and success enough, he would be utterly at a loss because his technique consists so largely on the arousal of fear, the driving of people's success forward through fear that they would not succeed, and fear is of course automatically destructive of unity of being, happiness, or contentment of mind. And it is fear always the dark shadow of idolatrous worship, which is corresponding the letter or the secret hearts of so many young people today, including melancholia, a sense of inferiority, afflicting them with the obscure nervous disorders and sometimes even driving them to self-destruction. This subjective fear is kept alive and operative by the deliberate appeal to fear and success advertising, which, more literally than figuratively, hits them in the eyes wherever they look. The gigantic question mark, the pointed gun, the accusing finger, and all those warning against every kind of infection which are themselves infections, because they plant in the mind some new fear to be added to a long catalogue of fears. Moreover, the fear of failure, which is the fertile cause of failure to foster in schools and colleges through the mediumship of interscholastic elections and examinations and all manner of quite unnecessary competitive tests, which through design to weed out the unfit result more often in humiliation and discouragement of the scholastic and social nonconformists, the very one who, if differently dealt with, are likely to be found to contain the most precious of human paste. We, who are revolted in the very idea of child marriages in far-off India, remain complacent in presence of these young, crushed lives, forced unions, and the wasting of the seed of talent still unripe. We would make a bond salesman of young Hamlet and encourage Ophelia to learn typewriting and stenography solely in order to become the secretary of the malefactor of the great wealth, King Claudius. But bad as this gets, richer or gets famous, attitude is the business and professional field. In the fine art, it gets worse, because it entices to such a wetter of inane and irresponsible productions as to blunt those organs of receptivity and impair that power of discrimination on which primarily a sound ecstatic depends, for the very word means to perceive. Furthermore, the compromises incident to achieve of a swift success or to the making of a talent marketable are devastating to the artist. His Pegasus becomes a hack, art becomes an industry, and when for the joy goes out of creation of the creative faculties soon cease to function. The animating spirit whereby a thing gets itself done determines its true quality and importance. This is the reason why in the moment an artist begins to think over much about gain, fame, or praise, he ceases to be in the true sense of an art. For art is not a shop or a show window where everything is displayed, priced, and advertised. Rather, is it a stadium for the development and exercise of latent greatness. The important thing in the practice of any art being not what the practitioner is able to produce, but what is it able to produce in him, what effect it may have upon his consciousness. The true artist spends his life wrestling with an angel without hope of victory and with only the strengthening of his spiritual sinews for reward. Great works of art are only the byproducts of the struggle, the spilt blood of the conflict. A symphony by Beethoven or a statue by Michelangelo are but the testaments of beauty, torment, and spirits, bloodstains and love's battles with the bright dark demons who would give them no rest. To the young man or young woman, dimly aware that the cruel everyday is capable of being transformed into a festival of labor, love, and achievement, I would say, rest all efforts to make you bow down to the Moloch of success, for something glorious and radiant awaits you if you are but true. Earn an honest living somehow, fulfill your obligations, and clean up your mess. Render unto Caesar, but everything beyond that which you are able to wrest from life is your own, to do with what you please with, and do with it whatever you please you. Devote yourself to the thing that thrills you, for that is the sure index of the direction in which your talents lie. Never mind whether or not it is profitable so long as it is profitable to your happiness. This is the effective way of becoming a truly useful member of society, because you will thus augment your own happiness, the total sum of happiness in the world. You will, moreover, be by way of becoming a real human being instead of a standardization factory product, with however high a polish or however resounding a trade name. Mind idolatry. The second modern idolatry to which I would call attention is the exaltation and worship of the purely rational mind. Although the power to reason and form concepts has undoubtedly brought man to his present estate and given him his control over natural forces, that same analyzing, rationalizing, critical faculty, exalted above every other, and energizing in that wasteland created by its own arid and devastating skepticism, bids fair to become the devil of the modern world. Goethe was deeply right when he made his Mephistopheles the embodiment of the mental principle unconditioned by love or compassion and dedicated to the service of the willpower. Shakespeare was no less truly inspired when he showed his arch-villain Iago to have the same psychological makeup. Evil be thou my good, exclaims Iago to the mind. All things are equal, and the mind has 1,000 eyes. At the time of the Inquisition, religious ideology waged war upon its Protestants and challengers by the means and the stake of the rack. Men of the character and caliber of Galileo and Bruno, representatives of that skeptical, searching, scientific spirit, all but universal today, were the sacrificial victims of that idolatry, and at the same time the emancipators from it. But now the worship of the rational mind has itself become an idolatry, with a priestcraft of its own, scarcely less sinister in its compulsory power. From this idolatry we can only be derived by the bold denial of the kingship of the mind. I once spoke to the editor of the great Sunday newspaper of the graduations and irreparable injury. Say that again. I spoke to the editor of a great Sunday newspaper of the gratuitous and irreparable injury often inflicted upon quite innocent persons by reason of his paper's policy of sensational and pitiless publicity. The truth of the matter is, he made answer, that a newspaper has no heart, and this is the truth about our competitive, mind-worshipping, scientific, industrial civilization. It has no heart. It takes small account of man as loving, suffering, dreaming, blindly groping exile from the world of the wondrous, seared by tumultuous and irrational passions and strange desires, and transfigured by sacrifices and self-immolations, stranger still. In place of this willful, emotional man, which everyone secretly knows himself to be, we are asked to believe in such phantoms as the economic man, motivated only by his material needs and moving in the two directions of production and consumption, or in the rational man, proceeding away from the premise and conclusion and acting always in accord to the dictates of his reason. Into such two-dimensional molds the priest and the inquisitors of our mind-worshipping mechanistic civilization seek to press multi-dimensional man. But signs are not lacking that, spirituality awakened, he will break those molds and discredit that priestly craft as surely as when, mentally awakened, he broke the mold made by superstitious monkish monasticism. For it appears to be a law of human evolution that we must throw down the very ladders up which we have just climbed, so that now, in order to attain this next eminence, we must deject the rational ladder in order to erect the institutional or intuitional one, whereby we may mount an apprehension of the fourth dimension as aspect of the world. Ouspensky names this fourth form of the manifestation of consciousness. It may be described as synthetic reason, just as the reasoning faculty, which is its third form, yielding the sense of three-dimensional space, is synthetic perception, perception being in turn synthetic sensation. The revolutions, which like those of a wheel seem necessary for progress, they are difficult and disturbing. The necessity for discovering in the God of yesterday the devil of today, and in the God of today the devil of tomorrow. But man's only adversity and adversary is and can only be what he can be, just as he only comforter as that which he must become. The present is called the age of reason because we have enthroned the rational mind and strive to shape our lives and all things according to its dictates. But into the sanctuary now penetrates a voice which says, the mind is the slayer of the real. Let the discipline slay this slayer. This sounds as blasphemous to the ears of the mind idolaters as I will believe only what my sense report and what my mind approves must have sounded to the dogma idolaters of the antecedent cycle. But the sovereignty of the rational mind has at least and at last reached its term, and for the following reason. With the ascendancy of the rational mind, power over evolution passes from the group soul, or from nature, into the individual. Further evolution can result only from the conscious effort towards growth on the part of the individual. Man, not striving towards evolution, not conscious of its possibilities, not helping it, will not evolve. And the individuals who is not evolving does not remain stationary but goes down, degenerates. That is, some of his elements begin their own evolution inimical to the whole. Now when this happens, the mind itself is one of those elements which evolve in a manner of inimical to the whole. That is to say, for those individuals in whom the growth of love and compassion has not kept pace with their mind development, de-evolution will set in. They will become dualistic, pluralistic. This is exactly what is happening today to great numbers of persons of the advanced mental type, which they have lost their unity of being, and the only way in which it can be recaptured is by a consciously undertaking polar reversal, by reasons of which, for the time being at least, the woman is in them is exalted above the man. They must slay the slayer. The mind must be made subservient to the whole. Sexual idolatry. The third modern idolatry I have in mind is the deeply vital because it has to do with sex. But because this subject has been dealt with in an earlier chapter, little need be added to what has been said. The amorous embrace, the sexual orgasm, which uninduced and unaccompanied by the supersensuous emotion, are not different from a shot in the arm or an alcoholic stimulation. But to the completely unified consciousness dominated by love, they are the translation in terms of physical sensation of the ecstasy of some domination. They are symbols of it, because they stand for and serve to represent it in the same sense that a strain of music stands for an emotion or a sentence stands for a thought. Such symbolizations are agents of realization by the personal consciousness of something superpersonal, in the same way that the golden image or the ivory crucifix are agents of realization of the peace of Buddha and the sacrificial suffering of Christ. But when love is merely and purely personal, when it is regarded as a possession instead of as an agent of realization of the life force, the sexual ritual degenerates into a mere indulgence, lost its efficacy, and there are only feathers where there should be wings. Now this is exactly what has happened. Instead of discovering in a sexual love an agent of regeneration, the sacramental bread and wine, which have become idolaters, love has become slain upon the sexual altar by our materialism of a mystery. This is the fertile cause of those excess, perversions, and morbidities, with their aftermath of emotional misery and physical disorganization, which makes sex a guarded wound. The healing of this wound is not by sex education of the current sort, though this may have its uses, nor by prohibition and regimentation supposedly conducive to morality. The remedy must come, rather, from the order of sex sublimation and self-discipline, which inevitably accompanies the realization that sex derives its every value from the magnitude of its coefficient. This is nothing other than the quality and degree of the love involved in any relation and the conscious and intensive cultivation of that true love, which alone is strong enough to overcome lust, because the life force is then in control. The victims of lust are those who do not love truly nor enough. Lust awakens only the toad within the stone, but the desire of the true lover for the truly beloved awakens pity, affection, awe, aspiration, and given appropriate circumstances, every noble and generous emotion possible to man. And who knows what to greater heights the worship of Eros is capable of carrying us. Blake says, "The whole creation will be consumed and appear infinite and holy, whereas it now appears finite and corrupt. This will come to pass by an improvement of sensual enjoyment." Thus concludes chapter 8.